Big baby's not gonna like this. No, no, no.
All right. Welcome to FaBled Hunters.
I'm Yuanji.
I'm Saint.
And we're gonna open up another discussion video.
Yeah.
We were talking off camera, and I had a funny question for Saint, and it's, is Command and Conquer the Shivan Dragon of Flesh and Blood?
I don't know.
And,
yes and no? I don't know.
And so today's video, we're going to be doing some comparisons between different cards. Even though Flesh and Blood and Magic are two pretty different games.
Vastly different, yeah.
I think that in general, the kind of feelings that you get when you're playing the game, these transcend whatever.
The game and the cardboard itself,
yeah.
Right? There's some nostalgic feelings that just bring me back when I'm playing Flesh and Blood, or when I'm looking at a card from Flesh and Blood that reminds me of experiences I had in the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, and if you're experiencing these things for the first time, Flesh and Blood's your first game, I think it'll be kind of cool to see how, if you played a different game in the past, it would have been how you're feeling right now.
Yeah.
So before we get to that question that we talked about, the Shivan Dragon comparison, let's talk about some other cards. I think one card that we both kind of agree on is that Sink Below from Welcome to Wraith. Defense reaction, blocks 4, gives you filtering. That card is like lightning bolt.
I would say that there is not a more apt comparison, and I would challenge the viewers, the ones that have played Magic, to come up with a better comparison. And I don't think there is one. I've spent time looking at it. The fact that as a collector, I agree. As a player, you agree that we're on the same page. Shows and is a testament to how apt that comparison is, because a Sink Below is probably the best card for its value, right? It's a common, right? So it's the most playable common, and value-wise, it's also, dollar-wise, it's also the most collectible common. So it just checks every single box. It's the simplest card. It's got 4 block and value. Some would argue 7, because it can block cards like Snatch.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I think that it's so if you're not familiar with Magic, Lightning Bolt is this card that they printed. It costs 1 resource in that game, 1 red resource, and it does 3 damage
to any target.
And it seems okay, well, what does that mean? Well, it's basically the foundation for the value of that game, right? That is as good as 1 card
for 1 resource can be.
Yeah. And so I think that Sink Below is kind of the same kind of thing, where it's hey, you want to block, Sink Below is it. This is, if we get into situations where 1 card's blocking on 10 or something, we're in Bizarro world.
Yeah.
How the game is built, Sink Below is it.
It's that fundamental near perfect building block. Yeah. It's accessible. They printed it at common, so it's the most common card out there. It's similar to Lightning Bolt. We just did an episode, Lightning, on MTG Unlimited. Lightning Bolt had 244,000 copies printed in common, whereas the rares, they only printed 18,000 copies. Sink Below is the same thing. Lightning Bolt is the most valuable common in Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, aka ABU, and Sink Below, and WTR Alpha plus WTR Unlimited is in common rarity, and in both games it's the most collectible common as well. And not only that, Lightning Bolt, if you think about it from the game of Magic the Gathering, was very defensive. For 1 resource, you got to remove it acted as removal, as creature removal. So you remove
Birds of Paradise.
Yeah, you'd bolt the bolt. Yep, you'd bolt the hippie. Anything that they came out with on the first turn probably would not be able to withstand 3 damage, instant speed, from a lightning bolt.
Yeah, it's like a way for you to kind of like shield yourself from your opponent doing some of the more high power plays.
Yep.
And I think that's a great place to start. As we're going through comparisons, here's like another fun card. Pretty controversial when it came out. Bravo starved the show.
Starvo?
Yeah.
Oh God, I had heard about how degen it was, and I was like,
you played it yourself?
No, I didn't. But when it first came out in March, I had heard from friends, worldwide collector friends, and player friends. They're like, oh God, this Starvo, what the hell? The game was fine until this card came out. What the hell were they thinking? And then I was like, well, it sounds really bad. Let me not actively get into deck building or anything right now.
Sure.
And then it was, a couple months later.
Same as training for the Pro Tour.
Yeah, training for the Pro Tour. Learning how to count to 3 and combining the elements. And I mean, I only got into that situation because I was like, hey, Tarek Patel, Matt Rogers. What do I play for the highest chance of winning one game at the Pro Tour? And they're like, it's only Starvo.
And you won a couple of games.
I did. I won 2 games and lost 4. So 2 is better than 1. But that was hella degen, right? And we don't agree on what cards that reminds us of.
Yeah, and so for me, the card it kind of reminds me of the most is Necropotence, or maybe a little bit later on down the line, it would have been like Tolarian Academy.
Okay.
So these cards, Necropotence is an enchantment. It costs like 3 black resources.
Black.
And basically what it lets you do is you can pay your life as a resource to draw cards. And you can do this as many times as you want. I think most of the time people would just draw like 7 to 8 or something.
Yep.
Off of Necropotence. And it was just like a way to fuel like a lot of value. But also simultaneously led to a meta in the history of Magic the Gathering that was, I guess, like very polarizing. I know I've read a lot of articles in the past where people were saying, oh, Necro format, it was like one of the most like skill testing formats, but then also a lot of people are like, oh well, everybody has to play Necro now.
It was one of the most brain dead and degen formats at the same time, because in the game of Magic the Gathering, normally you just draw 1 card after your untap and upkeep phases. So at the beginning, in Flesh and Blood you draw cards at the end of your action phase. In Magic you draw 1 card at the towards the beginning of your action phase. Whereas Necropotence format, you would just dump your hand and pay, call it 7 or 8 life, and draw 7 or 8 cards. So you're drawing 7 or 8 cards with not very much downside, because 1 life is a pretty cheap resource in Magic, a lot more expendable than in Flesh and Blood, and you're going 7 to 8 cards compared to your opponent's 1 card. I would say it is degen. Starvo is degen, but it's not that level of degen. I personally compared Bravo Star of the Show with the Prosper Bloom format, where in the Mirage Visions Weatherlight format after Ice Age, where Necro was printed, people are using, I think it was Cadaverous Bloom to discard cards for mana. They were playing Squander Resources to sacrifice lands for mana, and they were using the card drawing mechanic Prosperity. So it was these 3 cards, and then as long as you had these 3 cards, you could basically draw infinity cards and then blast your opponent with just a black resource drain life, because you would presumably draw any of your 4 drain lives with this Prosper Bloom format. Because I would say Starvo enabled that 3 element, what is it, ice, earth, lightning combination, where you had to do Captain Planet and combine all the elements to do an unfair or have an unfair advantage and hit your opponent. And that's it's more of like a meta or a deck type that Starvo encouraged, rather than the base card Starvo being a 1-to-1 comparison with Necro.
I think most notably just that the fact that the cards are very polarizing, and in both of these cases, just like some people like lean into it and it's like, okay, I'm just gonna play it, it's the best thing. Some people are just like, why can't I play anything else?
Why can't I play anything else? Oh, okay. I agree, because the Necro meta was kind of oppressive like that, where it was like, oh crap, I just mono black Necro. And then Prosper Bloom was the same thing, because it was like, it's almost like you're in a blitz format and you're playing against somebody with, 40 life CC. It's almost that unfair that during that Prosper Bloom format, you had to play that, or else you were done. Or you had to get lucky with like some counter magic. That it was literally that bad.
Yeah. The next kind of comparisons that I want to make is, in many ways, the generic cards in Flesh and Blood, I think, are really similar to lands in Magic.
Okay.
So if you are a collector of any sort of like, I would say definitely like older Magic cards, you have like whatever the individual cards, the artifacts, like some individual cards like Lightning Bolt, whatever, are very collectible, Time Walk. But for the majority of the Magic sets, the most like valuable and collectible cards are lands. And the reason for that is because lands, they go in every deck. You always need like to put lands into your deck, and so whenever like they come out with lands that have unique powers, then they always end up being pretty valuable.
Okay.
And so we see that in Flesh and Blood, where most of the time the generic cards are the most kind of playable into every deck, and so as a result, the generic like cards, the generic equipment usually
they're as necessary to Flesh and Blood decks and deck building as lands are necessary in Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, and I would say that they just usually end up being the most valuable. So I guess like the first kind of comparison that I wanted to make is a card kind of like Wounded Bull. So it's kind of been taking over the meta.
Wounded Bull, recently. Specifically in Icelander, right?
Yeah,
and then some fringe uses in Warrior as well.
So
you said, right?
I heard actually that predating Wounded Bull Icelander, Wounded Bull was played in Kano.
Oh, really?
A long time ago.
Really?
Yeah. So the more you know, but it's basically like the card that I think that this most reminds me of is a card called Gemstone Mine.
Gemstone Mine. I think Weatherlight. It was a land in Weatherlight, an uncommon land. Yep.
And so Gemstone Mine, it's like this land that it taps for any color of resource.
Yep,
so,
it's only got 3 gemstone counters though. You can only use it 3 times.
Yeah, you can only use it 3 times, so it has a heavy restriction on it. But normally when you have a land that taps for, like, when it gives you the flexibility of being able to just like pay for any color, comes with like a severe cost. So you have a card like City of Brass, that costs 1 life every time you use it.
Okay.
You have some lands that you have to, I think, like sacrifice a land when it comes into play in order for you to
like a conditional benefit, right?
Yeah. But Gemstone Mine, you just play it, you get to use it 3 times, and so kind of like Wounded Bull. Wounded Bull just gives you like a lot more value than you normally would get. And it's just like, it's always there, but it's only good, I guess, like in for like some niche decks, but when it's good, it's really good.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I agree with Yuanji on this one. For example, another very notable generic attack action is Snatch.
Yeah.
Preferably of the pink variety, because pink Snatch is the best Snatch.
Yeah.
And I'd say that Snatch would be comparable to one of my favorite value add lands. Would be, call it a Pendelhaven.
Oh, okay.
Pendelhaven was a card in Legends, a land. Although it's legendary, that was its restriction. It tapped for mana just like any other forest, right? Because forests provide green mana. Pendelhaven provided green mana.
Yeah.
And on top of that, although the downside was very little, being that you could only have 1 Pendelhaven, that was your restriction. Just like Snatch, compared to its vanilla counterpart is Wounding Blow, right? Pink Snatch, 0 for 4, 2 block, Wounding Blow, 0 for 4, 3 block, right? But for its downside, you got the upside. So Pendelhaven could tap to give a 1/1 creature +2/+3, and that would buff its attack by
+1/+2.
Oh, sorry, make it a 2/3.
Make it a 2/3.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it would buff the 1/1 creature and make it a 2/3 for a 100% buff in its attack and 200% buff in its defense. And the only downside was that, hey, I think you can even have more than 1 Pendelhaven in your deck, but only 1 can be in play at any time.
Yep.
So that slight downside, it's like a forest ++. Just like a Snatch, is a wounding blow, you know, with very small downside, 2 block instead of 3. But damn, you hit, you get to draw a card.
Yeah, I think to add on to like kind of like your Pendelhaven example, it's like usually these types of like aggressive cards, like Pendelhaven's like really good in these like small creature based decks. Like Snatch is good in like aggressive strategy. It's like not something that like always sees play. I would even argue that maybe Pendelhaven also kind of similar, maybe not in like function, but like something like an Art of War, where you have this like really strong utility that like fits, that you could put in like any deck, but really like shines when you put it in.
Okay. I could see that train of thought.
Yeah.
But secretly, I don't think we've had this discussion before, but secretly, I've always seen Art of War as call it like a Yawgmoth's Will, right? With the graveyard interaction and just providing so many additional resources, because the Art of War, it just feels like it's a Swiss Army knife. It can do anything. Okay. But if your deck, like Chain, can have graveyard recursion, right? Then it's basically like draw 3, play from your graveyard, do whatever the hell you want, banish, interact with everything, buff everything, and your opponent's dead. Yawgmoth's Will kind of did that. It was like, oh, your graveyard is now, it's your hand.
Definitely also like a very polarizing card when it's in C's play.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I can understand it. You always want to be the one casting the Yawgmoth's Will, not the one having it.
Not the one sitting there watching your enemy just destroy you and play, you know, infinity turns.
Twice. That's fair. I think the last example, and I've seen some people compare Enlightened Strike to like Power or stuff like that. But to me, the best comparison for Enlightened Strike is a land. It's just like duels.
A dual land. Not any specific dual land, but just dual lands in general.
Yeah, and so when you think about like dual lands, so normally like basic lands in Magic, they tap for 1 color mana. Dual lands tap for 2 colors. So like the original dual lands, they just have no restrictions. But then like newer dual lands like Shocks, you have to pay 2 life when they come into play. Whatever the case is, they add a lot of flexibility.
Flexibility plus value add.
Consistency into your deck. And that's kind of what Enlightened Strike does. Like Enlightened Strike, it's not like an all-star. It doesn't like overpower your opponents. But what it does is it adds a lot of consistency, a lot of flexibility, allows you to kind of play the game.
With the card sifting, right? Plus, if you've got a handful of reds, you can tuck a card and make it actually the same value as a blue pitch, right?
Yeah, so it lets you kind of like play the game at like whenever, which is kind of like what I think that lands do like in Magic, where like if you have the mana, then you get to actually play the game.
For sure.
So that's kind of my comparison.
And I agree with that, because Enlightened Strike is similar to duels in the sense that, especially in the alpha printing, Enlightened Strike is the most valuable and most collectible Majestic as well. So value-wise and collectability-wise, it's right up there with the dual lands. And once you talk about, for example, the Rainbow Foil Enlightened Strike, oh my, that's, you know, I mean, right now, even the unlimited Rainbow Foil Enlightened Strike, I think, is approaching $200 in the era of post-Monarch buyouts, right? And that's crazy that card is just, it's right up there, and it checks all the boxes. It's versatile, it's collectible, it's very powerful. It adds to nearly any deck right now. Even if you're a wizard, or you're mid-range, or you're aggro, or you're defensive, can play Enlightened Strike.
So we're at that time. You got to answer the question now that you stalled.
Okay, no, well, I didn't stall. We were just having a discussion about these similarities.
Giving you a little bit of time to think about it.
Okay.
Say, do you think, and this is my theory, I think that Command & Conquer is the Shivan Dragon of Flesh and Blood.
In terms of old school, right?
Yeah, and so to give people some context, so Shivan Dragon is this 6 mana creature. It's a 5/5. It flies. That's already huge stats for when at the time when the game first
power
came out.
Creep has changed things in the past 30 years of Magic.
Now it costs
but when it came out, it was a godly creature, and it brought fear into the hearts of the opponent. Just the fact that it's like, oh, do you have a Shivan Dragon in the deck? Or, oh my god, do you have 2 Shivan Dragons in the deck? Oh crap. And that card demanded answers. People built decks to have answers for cards like Shivan Dragon.
Yeah, and also like on a price point level, like you're talking about, even when the game like
just came out,
Magic first came out.
Yeah.
So obviously trading card games weren't like well established. Like they weren't cards in like the thousands or whatever, hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Back then, but I think you were saying that Black Lotus was like $50.
Yeah, when Black Lotuses were $50. This is 94, summer of 94, when Revised had come out and Magic finally became essentially it became accessible to anybody in America. Any comic book store or local game store, you could buy Magic the Gathering. It needed, like, A, B, and U needed to be released, Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, but that wasn't enough to even make it to much of the Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah.
Revised was when it became accessible, and when it came out, duels, cards like Underground Sea or Volcanic Island were $5 a piece, whereas Shivan Dragon was essentially $20. And so a revised Shivan Dragon was $20 when an unlimited Black Lotus was $50. So Shivan Dragon was worth, or 2.5 Shivan Dragons would trade into a Black Lotus.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I remember seeing pictures of like quarter pizza slices. That would be like about $100 today.
Yeah. With inflation, not a quarter slice of pizza, but pizza for 25 cents. Right? Yeah, so that happened back then.
Yeah, and so it'll be like, my theory on the Shivan Dragon thing is that I think while we're in this stage of Flesh and Blood, I don't know where the game is going to be in the next 5 years in terms of like the actual like gameplay. But I can say that like for its course of the first 3 years of Flesh and Blood, I think Command and Conquer has been like the attack that's kind of dominated.
Okay, so I think at the beginning of the episode, I had responded yes and no, right? So in terms of collectability, in terms of the heft or the gravitas that Command and Conquer has compared to the gravitas of a Shivan Dragon hitting the board in 1994, they are pretty close. They're near equivalent. Collectability-wise, Shivan Dragon was $20. Command and Conquer is 100 plus now. I think those are parallel. However, I would say as a player of old school Magic, Command and Conquer reminds me more of a Hypnotic Spectre, because a Hypnotic Spectre didn't cost that many resources to bring out.
Yeah.
You could play it early game. Like the scariest thing for you to see your opponent do back in 94 was turn 1 Dark Ritual Hypnotic Spectre, right? That because
Hypnotic, you don't have the bolt, then
if you don't have the bolt or the Swords to Plowshares, you're getting wrecked, because the Hypnotic Spectre, first it flies, so it has evasion, right? Then once it hits you, it makes you discard a random card, so it's got hand disruption.
Yeah.
And okay, so compare that with Command and Conquer. It costs 2 resources. You could play it nearly any time, even turn 0, turn 1, although you wouldn't play it turn 0, right? But still, you could play it at nearly any time. It's 2 resources, not very difficult to pull out. It's got evasion because it doesn't let you use defense reactions on its chain, right? And above and beyond that, it is hand disruption, because once it hits, it destroys your arsenal, right? So Hypnotic Spectre, I would say on the player side, it's more fitting. However, the only downside is Hypnotic Spectre, although it struck fear into the opponent, back in the days, Hypnotic Spectre was like a quarter or 50-cent card, and it came out at uncommon. So ABUR, it was printed at uncommon. So does that make sense on the yes and no? Because Shivan was very valuable, but a Shivan is not something you normally need to worry about until turn 6 or turn 7, because you needed to play 6 lands to summon the Shivan.
I see your point. And so that's the episode, but I wanted to throw in a little bonus comparison.
Yeah, a little bonus comparison.
At the very end, in our Dynasty boxes, we opened a Soraya.
We did.
And you were saying that it reminded you of a card.
Yes. It reminded me of Lyra Dawnbringer.
Yeah.
Because Lyra Dawnbringer is legendary. It was, I believe, 3 white and white, 5 mana. And again, just about power creep. We were talking about the Shivan Dragon being so insanely powerful. Lyra costs less than the Shivan Dragon.
Does more.
Is a white colored creature, which is traditionally less aggro in the mid range than red, in my opinion. And it's 5/5. It's flying. It's lifelink. It's first strike, and it buffs every other angel. So if you play an angel deck, it just like is an Art of War on every other, or Art of War buff effect on every other angel. So essentially, if that card hits the table and your opponent can't deal with it, they're dead in a couple turns. Like there's almost an unmanageable, no coming back type of reality for your opponent. And in Magic the Gathering, I would say it's the same. And Soraya is definitely there. But you were saying
I haven't played Soraya because I haven't played a lot of Blitz, where she basically is the only place that you can play her. But when I first saw the card, you're putting a lot of disrespect saying the original angel is the Baneslayer angel.
Baneslayer angel.
So they created an entire archetype of cards named after this card.
Oh, really?
Which is basically, it's a creature that when it doesn't do anything when it comes into play, but if you don't answer it, then it's going to be a problem.
Well, I believe the Baneslayer Angel is also like 5/5, flying, lifelink, first strike. Like all of those things, in by themselves in a creature already makes it a huge threat. But when you have the combination of all of that, that means lifelink. You're hitting. So first, it's not on the ground. You need a flying creature to block it in the first place. So evasion. If it hits, it hits first, and it will destroy anything with a 5 toughness or less, right? And then on top of that, if it hits the opponent, you're taking 5 life from the opponent, and it's life linking, so you're gaining 5 life. That's a 10 life spread, which is essentially what Soraya is doing too, right?
I think in Flesh and Blood, usually like a life spread is like much more impactful than even in Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, 8 life in Flesh and Blood, an 8 life spread in Flesh and Blood, I agree, is more impactful than a 10 life spread in Magic the Gathering.
And I think that in Flesh and Blood, it's like one of those things where I think it'll evoke the same kind of emotion where your opponent plays a Soraya, you got to deal with it. This isn't like something that you can just like ignore. Like
no, it's not.
You have to do damage to your opponent and pop it by ward. You have to, I don't know, it has Phantasm. You just pop it. You attack. Like you have to do something. It demands an answer, and I think it'll be like the same kind of like feeling. And as well as there's some people out there who enjoy collecting angels for I don't know what purpose. Maybe it's the art. I don't know what it is, but
Angel Simpin, hashtag Simp for Angels.
Like to do it. And so this is just a fun little video. I thought that I saw a couple of other creators doing these types of comparison videos, and I thought that we had a different perspective on it.
It was great for us to bring our take. And just one last thing. I want to say that I predict Soraya to be even more oppressive than either Baneslayer Angel or Lyra Dawnbringer, because those two creatures need a turn to refresh and act upon, right? Whereas there's no such thing as summoning sickness, where Magic the Gathering you have summoning sickness, where you can't attack with the creature once you bring it in. You invoke Soraya, you're going in for that 8-point spread like immediately, no?
Yeah, that's true.
So let's see how it plays out in the meta, right? We'll see, but we'll have to keep our fingers crossed and wait for that next Light Illusionist to come out, hopefully.
So I hope you guys enjoyed the video.
Yep. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, twiddle that notification button, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Wait, what did you just offer, Mr. Open Boosters? Mr. Taco King? Revised.
8,000.
And?
Just the tip.
Just the tip? Just the tip? Is that the Rudy buy list?
That's the Rudy buy list. I'm so full of tacos and lazy now, I don't want to do anything.
Well, I still want to see a box get open, but I'm not going to push him to open his box.